So Geno Auriemma recently had his 23-24 summer availability press conference, and you've probably seen the headlines. The big take-home message is just shut the F up and win games. And of course, that was the headlines in all the newspapers and on the internet. But I found more interesting was his take on UConn injuries. And basically, that is what I'm going to look at in this video as he throws the high schools and I guess to some extent AAU under the bus. First of all, take a listen to the clip that he gives in regards when he's asked about the UConn injuries.
They used to go 110% in the summer, and after what's happened the last couple of years, they're now trying to be a little smarter about how they go. Have you talked to them at all about how hard to go in the off season, and are you doing anything differently to avoid injuries?
Well, the interesting thing is that we used to go a lot harder back in the day. So I don't know what it is about what's going on in the the world that these kids live in when they're in high school or whatever. But I can honestly say that every one of the kids that has been out for us came to us with an injury that led to the one they got from high school. So it wasn't like they came in here 100% and then all of a sudden something happened. Every one of them had an issue coming from high school and never got taken care of. Or in some cases, there was surgery involved. And then all of a sudden, because now all of a sudden it's the competition's better. They're trying to push themselves a little bit harder in the off season. And we only have them for the month of June. Most of the summer they're on their own. So all of our postseason, preseason, all of that work is individual and strength and conditioning, injury prevention stuff, exercises. That's basically all you do during this time of the year. You're doing individual work and trying to get better, and you're trying to prevent anything from happening the best you can. And so for how many years, like forever, we wouldn't win all those championships if we didn't know what we were doing. But we've had to change what we do drastically because the kids that we're getting coming out of high school are damaged. And sometimes they know it and tell us, and sometimes they know it and don't tell us, and sometimes they don't even know it. And then when they get here and we go through all the testing and everything we do, so then it's just a matter of we got to work really, really hard with this kid to make sure that what we think could happen doesn't happen. And a lot of times we're successful and sometimes we're not.
So essentially, back in the day, we used to go a lot harder and my players didn't get injured back then. And I don't know what these kids or what world they're living in, but they come here broken. And we do our best to fix it. Sometimes we win, sometimes we lose. But all the injuries that these players have been tied to their previous injuries that they came to UConn with. Now, let's take a look at this. Does he have a point with this or not? I thought the best way to look at it was look by player and sort of their injuries, because he is correct. A number of the players have come to UConn with injuries. Did those lead to all the injuries they had? I think that might be a bit of a stretch, but let's take a look at them one by one. First, Caroline Ducharme. I recently did a video on her which breaks down all her injuries in detail, so if you're curious, have a look at that. But essentially, she had an ACL knee injury in the 8th grade, which was repaired, and she made a full recovery from. As well, she had a shoulder labral tear, which was also repaired, which resulted in her missing her sophomore year in high school. Now, she did show up to UConn with a hip issue, and it was never fully documented. Basically, it sounds like she had a little bit of a labral tear, and I suspect she had a cam lesion, which is like a bony buildup on the head of your femur. I don't want to get into too much detail, but that's just an injury that happens. It's sort of onset. It's gradual onset. and she managed that injury through her entire freshman year and played well. The issue for her was she got concussions, and her hip was no relation to her concussion symptoms that she wound up getting. I mean, that's from taking a shot to the head. So to say that those two were related or one led to the other, that one, you strike out on that one, Geno. As well, I don't think they're being real fair, or he's being real fair to the high school, because it's not like you have hip pain and we're automatically going to go in and do surgery. You sort of have to determine if it's an injury that you can manage or not. And she was able to manage it her whole year, her freshman season at UConn. So the decision not to have surgery until that offseason was actually not a bad route for them to take. The next one, AZ Fudd. So she liked to charm, also had a bad knee injury. She did her ACL and MCL in her sophomore summer. So she'd finished her sophomore year. That summer, she was at the USA tryouts, and she went up for a layup and landed awkwardly. She made a full recovery from that, but Geno's right. She showed up to UConn in a moon boot with a right foot injury. So and he later termed it, she's never come out and said what it was, but he said that she had a stress reaction, which is basically a precursor, like one of the metatarsals in her foot. So one of the little bones in your foot, it's a precursor to a stress fracture. So she was on the verge of a stress fracture. And to UConn's credit, they managed that injury really well to get her to play her freshman year and because that's a really difficult injury to manage. And they full credit to their training staff. Now, after that, she injured her knee again in her sophomore year, but that's not related to the stress fracture. I mean, that was Aaliyah Edwards running into her knee. So it's just bad luck, and that's what injuries are oftentimes, is bad luck. So AZ did arrive broken at UConn, but I don't think that's led on to her subsequent injuries, so you'll need to take the L on that one, Geno. The next one I am not sure about, and I will concede that. So Ice Brady, now she subluxed her patella. The question I have is, was she doing that in high school? There's no reports that she was. They sort of, I don't know if Geno's hinting at this when he sort of said there was no contact with her. She just slipped and it came out, which can happen with subluxation of patellas. So I just don't know. So anyway, they've gone ahead and done the surgery and fixed it. She's not playing 5-on-5 yet, but her rehab's going well. I think she's doing like 3-on-3s and individuals and making a good recovery. The final one is Paige Bueckers. Geno goes on later in the press conference, if you hear, talking about how she showed up with an ankle injury at UConn, and he's quite correct. It sounds like she had a bit of a loose ankle, and that turned in her freshman year, that turned into an issue. In January, when they played Tennessee, she rolled it, had to sit out a few games, and then she rolled it again in February against Xavier. And then after the season, in March of 21, after her freshman year, she had surgery on the ankle to clean it up. And again, she probably arrived a little bit broken or with an unstable ankle, so he's quite right on that. But to tie that into the subsequent knee issues, don't think that really works, because she had surgery in March of 21, and then she injured her knee against Notre Dame in December of 21. I mean, that's almost like 7 or 8 months post the original surgery she had. And she recovered from the injury against Notre Dame, like she had a tibial plateau fracture. And she, obviously she played in the championship game against UConn, in which they lost. And then he says himself, like, prior to her ACL injury, she was looking damn good. Like, she was looking confident, moving well, and everybody was excited about her having a great junior year. And then she took a misstep or jump stop or something happened, and it happened. And that's the way ACLs can be. I mean, you can be totally healthy and take a bad step and rupture your ACL, and that's the way it can happen. It's a devastating injury. I've questioned my concern with Paige Bueckers is, it appears to me she's a very hypermobile, very flexible person, and sometimes you can present more risk with hypermobile people because they can put more stress on their ligaments and tendons essentially because they're so flexible. So, but we'll see. They've obviously strengthened her up. They say she's looking good. So hopefully all of this will help her remain injury free. I didn't really talk about Aubrey Griffin because she had her back surgery her junior year. So she'd been at UConn for 2 years. So I think the majority, those 4 injuries, the only one I'm not sure about is ice, but I don't think you can say the other 3 that they're subsequent injuries that held them out last year. Descharm with her concussion, Fudd with her knee, which was a contact injury, and then Becker's, questioning who was monitoring the amount of volume she was doing in terms of training. But that's really the only big question I have, in terms of them being quote unquote damaged when they came to UConn. Now, I did a previous video where I sort of went after Geno a little bit when he was talking about his injury management of Descharm when she was on a minutes restriction. This is the video up there. And you can watch it if you want. Some said he was joking in terms of he would play her beyond her minutes restrictions if they went into overtime. I'm not so sure, but either way, I think overall UConn does a good job with the management of their injuries and how they rehab their players. I think that sort of is shown by the way Descharm's sister actually had the same hip injury that she had, and they were quite comfortable with her. Initially, she was going to go back to her home and have the surgery done by the same surgeon that did her sister's hip surgery, but her family was quite comfortable with it being done by the surgeon UConn uses, and her doing her rehab with him as well. So I think that sort of indicates that they do a pretty good job, I think, with their injury management. It's always a dicey area of the team managing injuries. Of are they looking after the best interest of the player or the team? But I think UConn does a good job. One other thing in terms of Geno saying, the sort of the almost the back in my day aspect. I'd seen a previous article on this about Candace Parker, and I thought it was interesting because she actually, there's a good article here where she showed up to Tennessee in 2004 season, or 2005 season. When she showed up, like as a freshman, she had a swollen knee, and they had to shut her down. Like she had to redshirt her freshman year, and they took a lot of time getting her knee right. So this was happening years ago. So players oftentimes show up, and it's that game of, these players want to get a scholarship. They're not going to advertise, hey, by the way, I've got a bad knee. It's like the pre-draft thing. If the players have niggles, the game is to try to hide that from the teams as best you can because they want to get drafted. And it's the same way, understandably, a lot when they're trying to get a scholarship. And I can see the frustration of Geno where, okay, we thought this kid was great, and now we hear that, okay, she has an ankle that she's constantly rolling, or this kid had a patella potentially that was, subluxing all the time. We've brought in a damaged bit of goods here. And so I do understand the frustration, but overall, I think UConn's handling the injuries well. I think they've had just a bad run of bad luck, and hopefully they are due for a run of good health. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe. Your poison down below is always welcome. Thanks a lot.